Okay, welcome back to But This Time It's Different, the show, I guess, where we unpack absolute chaos in the markets, tech, geopolitics, with an eyebrow permanently raised. I am Sinead, a space and defense economist, investor, and someone who has genuinely lost count of how many times the word recession has trended this year.
And I'm Alex, a finance and technology writer who has a stocks and shares ISA. So yeah, today we are asking the question that no one can seem to agree on, like, are we in a recession or not?
Yeah. And I mean, this has been, I feel like at this stage, we're on year 3 of this discussion, but we may as well just add some content to it. So the textbook definition is pretty simple. 2 straight quarters of negative GDP growth. Okay. But in practice, the reason why we can't agree on this is that it's messier than my 2023 tax return, which I have not yet filed.
Yeah, and most developed economies, especially the US, the UK, look at measures like GDP, employment, industrial output, like what direction is the stock market moving in? Is the yield curve inverted, et cetera, et cetera. But right now, none of these signals are lining up properly.
Yeah. I mean, so GDP is rising, but consumer confidence is absolutely cratering. And we've actually seen recently inflation is coming down though. So like, why are people not happy? But it's coming down kind of. Real wages are stagnant. So even though prices are coming down, people are feeling the burn. The other thing is that the job market is tight. But thousands of white-collar layoffs are flying under the radar.
You add to that plummeting volumes of goods being imported to the US that like you even see the US companies that were meant to benefit from tariffs, machine tools businesses slashing planned investment. And so in this kind of weird mix of measures, it's not a crash yet. Like the numbers are just about holding up. It's definitely not a boom. So we're in this sort of weird liminal vibe session, which means the data says that we're fine for the moment, but no one really quite believes it anymore.
Yeah. And, I mean, Kayla Scanlon kind of coined this term, the vibe session, which I genuinely have had issues with, right? Like the economy is genuinely not run on vibes yet. There are real reasons as to why people feel the burn. There are real reasons as to why they're unhappy. Yet some economists are looking at the data and saying, well, actually, everything looks fine. Our traditional recession indicators look totally normal. Therefore, the only reason that you feel a recession is because you are unhappy and disconnected from the data and you're just negative in general about life. Okay. But that mood actually matters. So the very famous University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index just hit a 6-month low. And in behavioral economics, which, okay, love it or loathe it, we know that perception actually does drive behavior way more than actual numbers. I mean, animal spirits are a thing.
Yeah, we saw a version of this in the run-up to the 2024 election, where you had the Democrats sort of insisting repeatedly that, the US economy was booming, it was the strongest in the world, it was roaring back to life. And if you look at every single indicator, they were trending in the right direction. But at the same time, people were recovering from years and years of significant inflation, and falling inflation was still inflation. Which is why economists historically, at the risks of sounding dreadfully 1950s, have argued that housewives are the best real-time economists. Because when you're doing the grocery shopping, managing bills, you notice prices ticking up. You see shrinkflation happening in real time. And then add on top of that, like weeks and weeks of absolute carnage in the stock market.
Yeah, I just want to tell a quick story about a friend of mine who visited. So I'm from Ireland, and I had this friend from America visiting a few years ago. And okay, so nobody in Ireland checks the weather, like literally never, because it always rains. And if it's not raining right that moment, it will at some stage, in the next few hours. And so my American friend is checking the weather, and he's like, I think it's going to be really sunny today, and we're going to be able to do all this amazing stuff outside. And I was like, nope, don't think so. And he's like, no, sure. Check out. I have like the best data in the world. I have the satellite weather system beamed straight to my phone. Look at it. It's not going to rain for at least like another 9 hours. Now he was facing the wall with his back to the window. I could see it was pissing down rain behind him. And this kind of feels like what is happening in the economy at the minute. Economists are saying, actually, no, the weather is totally fine. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be a very sunny day. And consumers are saying, actually, it is pissing down with rain. So these people feel it. Like regular people, and economists, I'm sorry, a lot of the time are just not regular people. People feel it, not in the data, but like in the detergent aisle, right? I mean, Milton Friedman famously talked about this very, very often, and it kind of is linked to his permanent income hypotheses and this kind of data around inflation expectations. People feel it long before economists notice it.
Yeah, I mean, this is where the subconscious economy lights up, and where I think like elastic versus sort of non-elastic goods sort of really that kind of distinction really shines through, because there are some things that you will always buy, like even if the price jumps significantly, because living without them is too painful. So if you work in an office, you will probably buy coffee even if the price jumps by 10%, or you're feeding the pinch, because the thought of getting through a work day completely uncaffeinated
Not
is
possible.
like, exactly, it's horrendous for most people. But when it comes to some like famous recession indicators, whether it's Botox, although I hear if you get trapped in that world if you once you step into it, but Botox, like lunches, underwear, vibrators,
Ooh,
tactical bangs, which you've written in our notes, and I have legitimately no idea what that means. I assume it's a hair thing.
can I just say, tactical bang in this situation for our non-American audience means fringe, nothing else.
Ah, I will defer to your
We're gonna get
superior.
there.
I defer
We're
to your
gonna
superior knowledge of hairography.
Right. So economists call these micro behavioral indicators, and they're not taken that seriously. They're really not, right? So kind of think of the lipstick index or the hemline theory. They're not precise, but they do track mood. And mood moves money. If there's anything we've learned from the equities markets in the last few years, mood moves money.
Yeah. I mean, this is why apparently Google searches for cheap Botox near me have been spiking, that like boxed hair dye sales have
Alex.
been on the rise for the last couple of years. Lunchbox sales are up. And
Mm.
apparently something that I didn't understand about the middle class psyche is that high-end candles are the ultimate like comfort spend, and people can't get enough of those either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is so funny. But yes, this is what happens when the official indicators are muddy, let's say. They're confused. People shift into intuitive austerity. They DIY everything. They trade therapy for self care. It's not rational, but it's completely rational.
Yeah, that's what this episode is about. So, we are going to take a bit of a dive into the Recession Vibes Index, because the real economy doesn't just live in charts, it lives in behavior. So, yeah, shall we turn to our first item?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So yeah, let's start with a classic, the men's underwear index, which is beloved by Alan Greenspan and mocked by economists, but it also appears to sort of have something to it.
Yeah. And can I just say anything that's mocked by economists, despite the fact that I know many that I am one, probably means there's a half bit of truth to it. Okay. So here's the logic. In a downturn, men stop buying underwear. Sorry, the behavior difference between men and women, by the way, is something that is inexplicably not rational and never going to be explained on a single podcast. Regardless, men stop buying underwear. Not because they don't suddenly need underwear. Trust me, you guys absolutely do. But it's the lowest priority spend for men. And clothes, by the way, based on the men that I know, is already pretty low. So the recession hits and men just stop buying underwear. What is wrong with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, and actually the data is surprisingly solid on this. But solid as the kind of vibes index goes, is that we saw this in 2008, is that men's underwear sales fell by over 2%, even though like every other clothing item, it basically remained flat. And this was a trend we even saw like during early COVID, even though, stimulus checks and furlough money were kind of making their way towards people.
Right, yeah. And it's the kind of signal that only makes sense when you know how humans actually work. I guess for men, they have no problem in delaying dignity.
So sort on men's dignity aside, what do we have next, Sinead?
The Tupperware recession. So we're going real Martha Stewart on this one, because nothing screams austerity is here like having your sad little microwave lunches in your WeWork kitchenette.
Are they still going? I lose track.
WeWork.
Yeah.
He just raised another 600 million or something dumb, and apparently is getting ready to IPO the new startup, which I didn't even know existed. Who knows?
Well, await the prospectus eagerly. But
Yeah.
yes, Tupperware. Here's the hard data. In 2024, the number of restaurant lunches fell by 3%, actually both in the US and the UK, even as total employment has been on the up. A number of restaurants that don't open for one or more days a week has been steadily increasing for the past couple of years. But at the same time, if you dig into the data, you can see grocery purchases for lunch prep items beginning to tick up. And that might be a lifestyle choice, but it's also possible that it's quiet budgeting.
Oh, for sure. And the Financial Times wrote about this recently. This really is invisible frugality, right? You're still working, you're going into the office, you would use any reason to get out of it, like going to lunch, but people aren't. FT ran a great piece on this a while back, talking about how the Pret sandwich is now a luxury good. Well, people are not buying them anymore, or at least not to the extent that they were.
Yeah. And it's not just about saving money, it's emotional hedging. Like these small changes in behavior feel like control. It's something you can fix when the macro picture feels like it's going off the rails.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And honestly, when even the McKinsey partners are lining up in the shitty kitchen to reheat last night's dinner, yeah, this is screaming that there's a recession coming.
Now, let's pull one out for the McKinsey partners queuing for the microwave and move on to our next item.
Yeah, this is a big one for you, Alex. We're talking about recession aesthetics. Quite literally, recession hair is real for women. You guys got the underwear index. We're getting the hair index.
Yeah, I mean, I had my hair cut last week by the same man who's been cutting it for 8 years, who charges me £20.
That was going to be my next question. For sure, women's haircuts are more expensive than that. So in the past 3 months, online searches for recession brunette and recession bangs have surged. And again, I want to make it clear because this is a technical term for the men out there. Bang, when you are not in the north of America, means fringe. Okay, so we are not talking about getting laid in the middle of a recession, although we will be talking about that soon.
Or well, not quite. Yeah, so what do we know about, moving swiftly on, what do we know about the recession bangs?
This is too much. Okay, so according to data, keywords like recession hair, recession blonde, recession brunette have grown massively from February to now. So this reflects this massive shift in consumer behavior. This is basically women choosing to forego expensive salon treatments in favor of more affordable, kind of natural looks. Okay. So the recession brunette, when you do not have the money to get a full head of highlights, blonde, done every 4 to 6 weeks, you need your hair to be brown. Brown is cheaper. Brown, you also convince yourself during a recession, is also nicer. Similarly, recession bangs, again, fringe, have been popular as this kind of really low cost way to change your appearance without having to change everything about you. It's the fastest way to drastically change how you look without getting Botox or a facelift. And I guess it quite literally covers half of your face with hair. This basically says that people are freaking out about not being able to afford hair treatments anymore. And they're ditching expensive salons for low maintenance, single process treatments done, sometimes even at home.
Why don't people just take this to its logical conclusion and just get short hair? It seems presumably much lower maintenance and would be much, much cheaper post pay cut.
Okay, well, Alex, since you're not even buying underwear, I'm not even going to give you a response to that. This really is about being able to emotionally control yourself and your life. And if you can't afford to get your hair done at a salon, you can think, well, the world is collapsing. Fine. I am broke. Maybe I'm unemployed. I can't afford rent, but I will still look good for a lot less.
So that broadly makes sense even to the uninformed male observer. But speaking of male observers, I think we had a slightly more controversial addition to our list, which was essentially the OnlyFans Index, or I think we're going to call it for the purposes of this podcast, because apparently when the economy is breaking down, tips for sex workers, exotic dancers, cam girls are in fact an example of an elastic good. So using the highly scientific tool of Reddit, we did a little bit of a trawl through sort of posts from people who operate in this universe and
Sorry, can I just say, Alex trawled through the OnlyFans workers, not me.
Be clear, I was not trawling through the OnlyFans workers. I was trawling through a discussion of the economics from people in the business end, but a discussion of the fortunes of OnlyFans management agencies. And this person on Reddit said, one of my close friends lives in Miami and owns an OnlyFans management agency. At the height of it, which was the start of 2024, he and some friends were making $1 million a month net. This time last year, they were making $350K a month net. Today, it's under $100K. All the OnlyFans girls are way down. So apparently at the top, incomes have dropped from $25,000 to $35,000 a month to closer to $8,000 to $12,000 a month. So it's a tough time to be, I was going to say a pimp, but sorry, someone who runs an OnlyFans management agency.
Yeah. And again, McKinsey partners are jealous of these salaries. We have been watching this quietly, Alex lurking more than others. Why is this happening? Because digital intimacy is an elastic good, which means as affordability decreases, so does the demand for that good. Okay. So when times are good, people tip more, subscribe more, pay for attention and other services. When they're broke, I'm sorry, back to the men and whatever goes on in the underwear region, the libido gets budgeted.
Yes. I mean, this is a modern version of something that economists have actually tracked for a very long time, the so-called stripper index. Another one of these formal recession indicators where dancer tips in strip clubs, which is, a very pure cash flow proxy in the service economy, because they tend to receive like 2/3 of their income via cash tips, has acted as a kind of forward recession indicator. I mean, I didn't even know that physical strip clubs still existed, but apparently they do.
The number of meetings that I know that happen in the US in kind of steak/strip clubs is still kind of crazy. 2008, dancers actually talked about this. It wasn't only Wall Street that had their salaries, their lives, their careers upended overnight. Like, dancers and strippers had massive declines in nightly tips, but especially in the kind of high-end clubs near Wall Street. Same thing also happened in early 2022. And actually, the data I got for this is from the Berkeley Business Review, taking strip clubs very seriously. When in 2022, the tips dropped, bookings fell, and OnlyFans revenue went way up. So dancers started live streaming, trying to reach consumers that had a higher affordability elsewhere, not in their direct geographic region. So even that revenue stream is now drying up.
Yeah, and that is, in a way, that OnlyFans is basically the new strip club, like algorithmic, direct consumer, very, very reactive to disposable income. And I think this is revealing a bigger trend, which is the collapse of the easy money era for creator economies. It makes me wonder why we're doing this podcast. But what looked like a permanently passive income turns out to be highly cyclical labor, dependent on vibes, dependent on wallets, and is now facing, I think, an existential threat in the amount of kind of AI generated shit that like people are getting instead.
Yeah. Well, firstly, we're doing this podcast because we get paid 250 grand a month for it. That aside, I mean, there really is an important macro point here. Okay. Sex work is actually one of the first places that economic stress shows up. We see this frequently. It is discretionary. It is often very luxury. It's emotional. It is highly exposed to shifts in specifically male liquidity being much more important to global indices than female liquidity.
If any of you listening has an OnlyFans dashboard and it's down this quarter, you've built your own macroeconomic model. So congratulations. Sinead, Talk to me about candles.
I mean, we're literally going from outsourcing your romantic life via OnlyFans to insourcing it at home.
Can we not dignify it with the term romance? This podcast reserves the right to be judgy.
So luxury candles, another great one. Okay. So the most millennial of recession indicators yet, the luxury candle spike. It kind of sounds, for most of the men listening to this, like I'm making this up, but it's not. Sales of high-end luxury candles right now are booming. And I mean like the really expensive ones. So I mean, Alex, you probably don't know this, but you can pay like $100 to $150 easily for a candle. So Diptyque, Le Labo, Cire Trudon. I mean, these are the big luxury names at the moment. And they're not just accessories. They're basically coping mechanisms for when you need your house to smell really good because you can literally no longer afford to leave it.
To the horror of someone like me who's never bought a candle in their life, the global luxury candle market is projected to more than double over the next decade, potentially hitting over 1.7 billion by 2035. So that's a compound annual growth rate of over 10% for bits of wax and wick and, I guess, vibes.
It's back to vibes. Back in 2013, okay, when the UK really struggled to kind of recover from financial crisis, deep austerity, British candle makers actually reported massive demand spikes, and this part of the economy grew. Now, I do not usually refer to the Daily Mail for my economic hot takes, but even those very smart economists at the Daily Mail were confused. Why were people spending so much money on candles? And it basically came down to the fact that people are at home all the time. They can no longer afford to go out. They still wanted the atmosphere. So if you cannot afford a dinner at your favorite 2-star Michelin, you can light a candle and make your dinner feel a little bit nicer, or at least smell a little bit better.
And then hopefully your other half will cut off their OnlyFans subscriptions.
Well, they've already done that because this is like a couple survival instinct.
Going from luxury candle to the most depressing part of the consumer aisle, what is our next indicator?
It is the recession bellwether, which is the frozen pizza aisle in supermarkets.
So yes, the frozen pizza industry is another one of these slightly depressing industries that's growing at the moment. So in the US alone, frozen pizza sales hit $7 billion last year, and they're projected to continue growing at a pretty healthy clip. I think something like 6% a year for the foreseeable future, because ultimately pizza is cheap, it's easy, and I assume people find this comforting as well. I've never eaten a frozen pizza, so I don't know this for sure.
You've never eaten a frozen pizza?
No.
So what's interesting about this is that in Ireland, where restaurants are struggling so badly because of the high cost of rent, they have all changed their menus to offering pizza. And any new restaurant that opens is literally selling pizza because they are so cheap to make. There's a massive margin on them, and absolutely everyone apart from you, apparently, seems to want them. Okay.
I don't mind. I'm not anti-pizza. I've obviously eaten pizza in my life. I've just never had one out of a freezer.
Well, I'm glad this podcast is paying 350 grand a month. You don't need to buy one, but a lot of people do. Frozen pizza is known as one of the big kind of economic soft landings. It's not glamorous, it's not fresh, and it's not eaten by Alex. It's affordable, it's carbs, it's hot, and it's calories.
And again, this is the kind of data that your profession, the economists, tend to mix because they're too focused on sort of consumer durables and big ticket items. But these kind of like subtle cuts in the shopping basket do act as a real indicator.
Right. And if you consider at the minute that a couple of things have happened outside of this too, people are not going to restaurants anymore. Even if they are at home with their partner who is, been starved of OnlyFans, they've got the candle going, why not order in? And we're seeing right now specifically that DoorDash or Uber Eats or Deliveroo has become unbelievably expensive because they now have this grip on the market. Each of them have a large enough market share to be able to double the prices of delivering food. So people are cooking their own pizza for not only the benefit of not having to pay restaurant prices, people are exhausted by paying for tips for drivers, and they can no longer afford that either.
Well, good news is that DoorDash and Klarna have now started a new partnership, so you can go into debt, have your lukewarm, overpriced food delivered to your door.
And this is literally all you need to know about the fact that there's a recession here. That you can now pay for your Deliveroo or whatever delivery pizza you've had in monthly installments.
Can't remember who it was that described most fintech companies as subprime lending with an app.
Like,
Yeah,
that's 100% accurate.
but
Okay.
yeah, here we go. I mean, we talked a bit about Reddit earlier in the context of the OnlyFans recession. Are other bits of the Reddit Marvel Cinematic Universe showing interesting patterns?
Yeah, because I mean, I have gone through and trolled Reddit after Reddit after Reddit in the weird and wonderful deep dives, and traffic to the subs like frugal, simple living, poverty finance has truly spiked, and not just by a little bit. These are no longer hobbyist forums. These are like full blown, massively busy people constantly online, thousands of comments, forums where people are actively engaged all the time. Like, it's called poverty finance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge Reddit user, but I've anecdotally noticed that what gets pushed at me in my Instagram feed has changed, and the number of prompts I get for what could be a second job, what could be a side hustle, what's a way of finding some passive income. Some of these pieces of advice are quite sensible, but the favorite one I've received so far was that I should start a laundromat, which seems like a very capital intensive way of saving money.
Yeah,
But
and that's kind of crazy. We can do another episode on this another time, but I'm pretty sure private equity already owns those anyway.
not the ones around where I live.
You could start it and sell it to private equity.
Blackstone does not own any laundromats on the Holloway Road.
But going back to the Reddits, right? People are now teaching each other how to do weird things, which is kind of like, have we gone back to community? Maybe when money was in abundance, we hated each other. Now we are desperately relying on other people to teach us how to not spend our money, how to batch cook dinners for weeks on end. I literally saw one that explained how to make a batch of your own toothpaste from baking soda because Colgate was too expensive now. This is late stage capitalism meets recession in a very kind of nearly endearing way.
I refuse to believe once you factor in, well, you've got the cost of the ingredients and you've got like the value of your time. I refuse to believe this is a financially efficient way of making toothpaste. We'll put that aside, but
So people are panicking.
yes, well, yeah, when Reddit is the family CFO, we are deep in the vibe space recession.
I mean, going back to your comment about Instagram, I don't know if this was just like a thing that people did because it got a lot of views and pushed a lot of traffic towards their accounts. But there was genuinely a stage, and I no longer see these videos. So I don't know if I didn't engage with them enough. So I no longer see them now. But there was a stage at which people would sit in their car and film themselves crying because they couldn't afford anything anymore. And they just had no idea what to do with their lives now that they were poorer than poor. I don't know if this is like a social media movement or if these people on Reddit genuinely are sitting at home trying to figure out how to get Colgate.
My general principle on social media is that people who film themselves in their cars are disproportionately crazy. Like there's some kind of far right influencer or like conspiracy theorist who always appears to be driving when they're on camera, and I have absolutely no idea why.
Okay, so let's zoom out. Alex, are we in a recession?
Depends who you ask, but I'm going to say yes. And people are not going
Interesting.
to wait for Jerome Powell, peace be upon him, to make it official. They are making decisions now, whether it's in the freezer aisle, in front of the mirror, on Reddit, or in some of their more unconventional spending habits.
And this is actually what behavioral economists call revealed preferences. So, what people actually spend their money on when no one's watching, this is the movement of the economy. And I remember back shortly after COVID when economists kept saying there is no inflation. We are not entering an inflationary environment. And I would go to the store and my toilet rolls now cost $15 for three. Like, absolutely, we are entering inflation. And it's exactly the same thing now. This is why private equity and McKinsey partners are bringing in their dinner from the night before into the office.
So yeah, when the official sentiments can't keep up with consumer behavior and you still don't understand what an inverted yield curve is after repeatedly Googling it, which is definitely something that never happened to me, you need to look elsewhere.
So thanks for tuning into, but this time it's different, where we have realized that Jay Powell is not as savvy as everyone thinks he is on recession indices. This time we might be in a recession, according to some of the quirkier indices we looked at. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.